Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, President Muhammad Buhari sent special envoy to South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to convey his concerns on violent attacks against Nigerians in South Africa. President Ramaphosa condemns attacks on foreigners in South Africa, says that violence is unjustified. Traffic gradually builds up as ongoing reconstruction at the Berger-Kara axis of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway begins to take shape. And residents flee to the roofs to escape rising floodwaters as Hurricane Dorian continues to hover above the Bahamas.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's gross domestic product falls to 1.94% in the second quarter, and that's down from 2.10% recorded in the first quarter of the year.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria's Super Falcons advance to the next round of the 2020 Olympic qualifiers.
And from Abuja, family of the abducted Dapchi schoolgirl Leah Sharibu appeals to the federal government to ensure the release of their daughter following assurances that she is still alive.
Nigeria's leaders are not taking the attack on Nigerians in South Africa lightly, even as President Muhammad Buhari has dispatched a special envoy to convey to President Cyril Ramaphosa his concerns about the situation. President Muhammad Buhari expressed his displeasure over the treatment of Nigerians and demanded an assurance of the safety of the lives and property of the countrymen. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has also criticized the wanton killing of Nigerians in South Africa, saying that the violence runs contrary to ideals that the great anti-apartheid leaders fought for.
This is the last meeting of the Nigerian president and his South African counterpart during the recently concluded African Development Conference in Japan. A meeting some concluded would put the final nail to the serial attacks on Nigerians on South African soil. That hope would not last. Just days after, the country wakes up to another wave of attacks and looting of foreign-owned businesses, with Nigerians amongst the victims. This latest attack is already generating reactions. President Muhammadu Buhari's immediate reaction is dispatching a special envoy to President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa with a view at getting commitment and assurances of safety for Nigerians.
This recent attack,
the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, also condemns the attacks, which he says are needless.
It's unfortunate. Nigeria has invested a great deal, not only in the destruction of apartheid and the pulling down of apartheid, but again, this is all contrary even to the very ideas that all of the great leaders of South Africa fought for, including the current president. You know, this level of bigotry, this sort of bigotry is just terrible and is so completely unacceptable.
On his part, the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, thinks the wave of xenophobia on Nigerians, if not checked, will grow to consume the continent. According to Mr. Lawan, quote, "I believe we have faced enough. We will no longer take it anymore. I believe we have faced enough. We will no longer take it anymore. The South African Parliament must act fast to put a stop to this menace." End of quote. The reactions continue and Nigerians have begun to show their displeasure, hoping that this will be the last time their brothers and sisters in South Africa are targets of a needless attack.
In the meantime, South Africa's acting High Commissioner to Nigeria has described the attacks against Nigerians as unfortunate but not xenophobic in nature. Mr. Monroe says that the attacks are rather sporadic acts of violence by miscreants taking advantage of a bad situation. This is coming as the Minister of Foreign Affairs insists that the killing of Nigerians in South Africa must stop. He is proposing the implementation of what he calls early warning mechanisms, as well as compensation for the victims of the attacks.
You realize that last night I was listening to a statement by the Minister of Police. He has also made an observation that there are certain South African establishments that were also banned. ShopRite and Spar are those two establishments that he had made an observation on. So this is a very clear indication that this is just rampant, this is sporadic, quite very senseless, especially for this to be happening, and it's a complete disregard for the law. But we do not have a lot of facts on the table to substantiate on many claims that have been made. But I can say without any shadow of doubt that what we are witnessing or what is unfolding now in South Africa are sporadic acts of violence, are sporadic acts of criminality. These are individuals who are taking advantage of the situation that we find ourselves in, and we condemn that. So, Moyo, these are not, to the best of our knowledge, acts of xenophobia.
In the first place, we have to address the issue of compensation. There has to be accountability and there has to be responsibility for compensating all those Nigerians that have suffered loss. And we are going to absolutely push for that. And secondly, we believe that, but I will not go into that much detail on that, but that the two security forces, South African and Nigerian, we can have an arrangement where there will be cooperation on the ground in South Africa to arrest such events and occurrences.
Well, still on the story, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has come out to condemn the violent attacks on foreigners, including Nigerians, around a number of provinces in his country. Mr. Ramaphosa says that he is convening a meeting of ministers in the security in order to closely monitor the situation and find ways to put in a stop to the violence. According to the South African president, there is no justification for the attacks on people from other countries.
Now, I'd like to condemn the violence that has been spreading around a number of provinces in our country in the strongest terms. The attacks on people who run businesses from foreign nationals is something that's totally unacceptable. It's something that we cannot allow to happen in South Africa, where people who are running their own businesses are attacked and their businesses are destroyed through looting and being firebombed, something that is completely against the ethos that we as South Africans espouse. And there can be no justification whatsoever about what people are having a grievance over, that they should go out and attack people from other countries. Because when they do so here, they should also know that fellow South Africans will be attacked in other countries. We are a country that is completely committed against xenophobia. We do not allow and cannot tolerate the attacks on people from other African countries and indeed from other countries completely. So these attacks are completely against the rule of law, and we want our security forces to carry on with the work that they've been doing, arresting the perpetrators, ensuring that these violent acts do not continue.
President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. In the meantime, several Nigerian religious leaders and civil rights groups in South Africa have broken their silence on the attacks on foreign nationals and asylum seekers. South African ruling party, the ANC, has also called for calm, while the South African government is expected to meet residents of the affected areas. The Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa, NICASA, condemns the violent attacks, while the Nigerian Students' Organization is calling for restraint and an end to the intimidation of foreign students at different institutions in the country. The leader of the Christian Association of Nigeria, South Africa, Archbishop Benson Uwa, who spoke on behalf of the group, called on the South African government to intervene.
We as CANSAP strongly condemn these barbaric acts. It is man's inhumanity against man, and in particular, African inhumanity and hate against fellow Africans. We condemn and state categorically that the attacks on foreign nationals are xenophobic, not just mere crimes or criminality as mentioned in certain quarters.
The Nigerian community in South Africa is saddened to learn that the attacks have resulted in displacement, destruction of property, loss of the sources of livelihoods, and insecurity. We want to use this medium to remind the South African Authority that South Africa, as state party to the African Charter, has the obligation to ensure that migrants, foreign nationals, including Nigerians and other individuals who seek refuge in South Africa, enjoy all the rights and freedoms guaranteed in the African Charter.
And what appears to be a reprisal in some parts of Lagos today has left one person dead. From Lekki to Surulere, there were reported cases of protests by some Nigerians over the killing of Nigerians in South Africa. The protesters are targeting businesses with South African interest in Nigeria. In one of the incidents, a police patrol van was set on fire after a aggrieved person stormed the complex located on the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway, chanting violent songs. We'll have more on the attacks as we continue in the course of the bulletin. To other stories now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, has in their custody 2 suspects amongst the over 70 persons indicted in the recently released money laundering and cybercrime offense in the United States. The EFCC Abuja Zonal Head, Mr. Aminu Aliu, told journalists at the briefing in Abuja that the suspects, Chika Augustine and God's Power Nwachuku, are currently in their custody and will be prosecuted. He also said that the sum of $35,000 was recovered from Mr. Augustine, while another suspect who is also on the list is being investigated.
Prior to the release of the FBI list, which you are all aware that there was a list of over 77 Nigerians that are suspected to have been involved in cybercrime cases. We had, in collaboration with the FBI, cases under investigation of which 2 suspects, I mentioned their names, Chika Augustine and Promise, August Power Promise. We had in our custody 2 suspects indicted in the list released by the FBI. On the other hand, another suspect on the list is being investigated independently by us on a different case, and his case is pending arraignment. He has been arrested since around last year, 2018. His case has been concluded and filed in court, pending arraignment. You know, the court has gone on recess, and they will soon resume. As soon as they resume, we're expecting our case to be assigned for prosecution.
In part 2, after the break, we get more insight into the attacks on Nigerians in South Africa and the implication of this for the relationship between both countries. Stay with us.